The second concept in section 6.1 deals with factoring by grouping, and you see your rules there for factoring by grouping. You want to group the terms that have a common factor, usually we put them in two groups, factor out the greatest common factor, write down the factor that remains, and then factor anything that's left. Our first problem says factor by grouping, and we give you a problem that's already halfway done. We have 3y times parentheses 2y plus 5 plus 2 times parentheses 2y plus 5. What you'll notice about this problem is that they both have 2y plus 5's. So that means I can take a 2y plus 5 and write down that factor. That's the greatest common factor. So we can open our parentheses and see what's left behind. When I take a 2y plus 5 out of this first one, what's left behind is 3y. When I take a 2y plus 5 out of the second one, what's left behind is a 2. So my answer would be 2y plus 5 times 3y plus 2. But this one's halfway done for us already. Let's start with some from scratch. If you come across a factoring problem that has 4 terms, you have to know that's grouping. In this class, that will be grouping. My first problem is x cubed minus 3x squared plus 4x minus 12, and I'm going to work it by grouping. So I'm going to group my first two terms and my second two terms. In this first group, I notice they both have an x, so I'm going to take out an x squared. The smallest x is x squared. So when I open my parentheses, what's left behind is an x minus 3. In the second group, what they have in common is a 4. But the signs are really important, and so I work mine with this thought. Whatever the sign of the third term is, that's what you want to factor out. Working it that way is going to make it a lot easier. So I'm going to take out a positive 4. So when I take that out, it leaves me with an x. And 4 times a negative 3 would give me a negative 12. That is not my answer. Don't stop there. At this point, I see that both factors contain an x minus 3. So I'm going to take this x minus 3 and put it on the front. Opening my parentheses, I can see what's left over. If I take out the x minus 3, that leaves me with an x squared. And if I take out the x minus 3, that leaves me with a plus 4. So my answer would be x minus 3 times x squared plus 4. If you wrote your x squared plus 4 in the front, that would be just fine. So let's try a second one. This one will be a little tougher because of signs. So we have 2pr plus ps minus 6qr minus 3qs. I'm going to group the first two and the last two. In the first two, what they have in common is a p, and that's all that they have. So when you take out a p, that leaves you with 2r plus s. In the second group, what they have in common is they have the number 3 in common, and they also have a q. But I have to be really careful with the sign. So my third sign starts with a negative, so I'm actually going to take out a negative 3q. So if I take out the negative, that leaves me a positive left behind, and 3 times 2 would give me 6. R already took out the q. That leaves me with an r. 3q times 2r would give me a 6qr. Now I took out a negative, so when I took out the negative, that leaves me with a positive left over. I took out the negative, the 3 and the q, so what's left behind is s. Now what I have in parentheses is the same, and it has to be the same every time. So I can take that 2r plus s and bring it to the front. And what's left behind, once I take out the 2r plus s, is p minus 3q. Okay, so let's try another one. 10a squared b minus 15ab minus 4a plus 6. Let's group our first two and our last two. In the first group, they have a 5 in common, they have 1a in common, and they have 1b in common. Seeing what's left, 5 times 2 would give me 10 with 1a minus 5 times 3 would give me 15, and I don't need any a's or b's left. In the second group, the only thing they have in common is a 2, but I have to watch my sign. Since my third sign was negative, I'm actually going to take out a negative 2. So taking out the negative would leave me with a positive 2a. And then if I take out a negative on the back, I need to get something that would give me a positive 6. So negative 2 times a negative 3 would give me a positive 6. Two negatives would make a positive 6. Now then, what they both have in common, and they are identical, they have a 2a minus 3 in common. If I factor those out, what's left behind is 5ab minus 2. Trying one more of those, we have x cubed plus 6x squared minus 2x minus 12. In the first group, they both have an x, and the smallest x is x squared, so I'll take that out. That leaves me with one x left behind, plus 6. In the second group, what they have in common is a 2. But I'm going to take out the sign of the third term, which happens to be negative. So when I take out a negative 2, that leaves me with an x. And I took out the negative, which leaves me with a positive 6. What they have in parentheses now is an x plus 6, so I'm going to bring that to the front and take it out. And what's left behind is x squared minus 2. Remember that all of these greatest common factor and the factoring by grouping, you can check them by just FOILing or distributing them out. So if you FOILed out x plus 6 times x squared minus 2, you would know whether you got the right answer or not.